Good morning and welcome everybody to we don't have a name for this, but I wanted to pitch. I wanted to pitch this morning.
Let's hear it.
Stratus Sphere, right? It's like
Oh,
Stratosphere, but it's the Stratus Sphere. So people are not going to understand how it's spelled right off the bat, right? But Stratus Sphere, Stratosphere Podcast.
love it.
I
Okay,
like it.
cool. Cool. Well, my name is Owen Phillips. I'm the marketing director for Stratus Services. Over here we have Joel and Josh. I'll let them do introductions for themselves. Josh, if you want to kick it off.
Sure. Joshua Rabe, I'm the owners here at Stratus Services.
And I'm Joel Recane. I'm a cybersecurity engineer at Stratus Services.
We're gonna speak to you all this morning about some changes in the CMMC landscape. I am the not expert in the field, but I am helping everybody with the run of show. These two gentlemen definitely have a little bit more of a grasp on what's going on. If we want to kick it off, I'd like to just get a little overview of Stratus if one of you want to take the reins and how we're engaging in the cybersecurity space.
Yeah, I can steal that one. So we're an IT consulting company. I guess we kind of like a three-pronged approach to IT. We have an MSP side of the organization, so smaller companies that maybe need full-time IT support. We manage that through doing your help desk, doing your security, doing your firewall, your antivirus, all of that you'd kind of see typical from MSP. I think we take it from a slightly different standpoint where since one of our main focuses is IT security, we're sort of more IT security focused for those MSP clients. Then we have some outsourced IT engineering. So a company needs a project completed. We can kind of be your system network architects and engineers and come and complete that. And then finally, kind of, I guess what we're here talking about right now is the security side of it, compliance, CMMC, helping you get policies, procedures in place, prepare you for an audit, sit down and with the auditors and go through that process with you and with the auditors.
Joel, for people who are coming into this completely blind, can we get a little flavor of CMMC, what it is, who it's for, what's going on there?
Yeah, so CMMC is a new cybersecurity certification model that the DoD is pushing out to people in the defense industrial base through contracting mechanisms. So essentially, if you do contracting work with the DoD and you handle a couple specific types of information, you are going to be required to get either do a self-assessment or get a third-party certification against a specific cybersecurity control framework.
Gotcha. And refresher, is this just for people who are doing DoD direct work, or this impacts subcontractors and the whole like chain of people, correct?
Yeah, subcontractors as well. Anyone in the whole chain of subcontractors under a prime will have the same requirements as that prime.
Okay, awesome. What we wanted to do today to kind of flesh out this overview is there are a bunch of changes that rolled out coming into 2025. So, I wanted to turn it over to these two guys to give you a little bit more of a preview, a review preview for 2025 of changes that we are seeing in the space, questions that contractors are currently asking us and or, just as they are scrambling to get certified for these various things. So, for those who may not have been paying attention over the holidays, we got a full rollout of rules and regulations that have been in the works for what, 4 years now? 4-ish years?
Yeah.
So the rule finally dropped. And so I don't know who wants to take this, but if somebody would grab what are the most recent updates that we have seen that are a little bit more tangible in the last couple of months?
I'll give like a brief overview of like the generalities, and then Joel, maybe you can jump into the specifics on it. They're making small changes here and there. Like a lot of it in there is formatting changes. Like this heading is removed, and now it all falls up under a different one. There's a reorganization of where things fall in there, and I think like really what they're trying to do is really just streamline this thing. It's perfect, but the whole point is like this isn't going anywhere. They're trying to make all these changes at like a high level to make it easier to implement and to orchestrate, and those changes may still end up happening over time, but that's not because this thing isn't finalized or it's going to change and your requirements of what you need to do are going to change. It's literally just like a lot of streamlining. Now there are some changes that people should be aware of they may be required to do, or there's clarification that where it wasn't as clear before, but I'll let Joel kind of dig into more of the specifics on it.
I think that's definitely true with the publication of the final rule and CMMC going live. There was all the documentation on it from the DoD was released in its final form with some minor clarifications to it. It was, like Josh was saying, broadly the same. There's no really like shocking changes to it, just kind of minor tweaks to language and roles and responsibilities and stuff like that.
And so then the thing that I saw that floated into our chat was there was the cap plan that had a big change recently, meaning that was kind of the rules that were floating in the background that were waiting on the drop. And so we got the cap 2.0 for quote unquote level 2 people. So who's a level 2? Who does this impact? And then maybe like three big take homes from this change in rule.
Yeah, so CMMC level 2 applies to contractors who handle controlled unclassified information.
Like what's a CUI?
Man, so that's its own kind of complicated question in and of itself. It's a specific type of government information that they consider. It's not classified information, but it's still sensitive enough to require some protection. So that's why it's controlled unclassified information. What exactly it is, it's a really kind of broad type of information that applies to every part of the executive branch in the government. So I guess all that to say, answering what is CUI is, if I could do that, I would be a millionaire.
I think one like thing to look at is if you're getting contracts, they're gonna mention most likely that there's CUI involved, or they're gonna mention some DFARS rules, and then you're gonna know, hey, I'm probably gonna have to meet some of these requirements. So it should be obvious in your contract language that you're going to be receiving CUI, or possibly they've started marking emails that they're sending to you as CUI. It's also possible that they're not marking it yet. It's kind of seen it all over the place where sometimes they're not marking it, where eventually when this is happening and CMMC level 2 is in a contract, that it will be marked. But if you can assume that it falls below classified information. So it's not something classified, but it's something that you're working on, that if someone was able to piece those types of information together, we maybe don't want it getting out to foreign adversaries. That's the type of information. It's not secret, not top secret, but it's just information. If, for example, if you have a building design for a building on base, that was probably going to be considered CUI.
Gotcha.
If you have coordinates of a building location, that's probably going to be considered CUI. So things like that are maybe some examples of something that seems maybe innocuous, but would still fall under CUI and require you to get a level 2 certification.
Gotcha.
And like Josh was saying, it comes down to specific contracting clauses. Like DFARS 252, 204, 7012 is the contracting clause that will let you know the obligations you have to protect CUI. So that's probably the most definitive way to know if there's CUI coming into your network in conjunction with some contract.
Gotcha. So back to the cap 2.0, what is it? It dropped. What's a big take-home message on that?
Yeah, so the CAP is the CMMC assessment process. It's essentially the document. It's published by the CyberAB, which is the governing body over CMMC. And it's the document that describes step by step how an assessment has to happen.
And any big take-homes from it? Oh, sorry, Josh, go ahead.
No, I think what I was going to say is this would be really helpful for a company who is technical, knows what they've implemented, how they're going to be assessed. So when they hire an assessor and they come in, what is that assessment process going to look like? You can kind of step through that document and get a good understanding of what the process is going to be like. So you can kind of do a mock assessment of yourself in preparation for it.
Yeah, and I think this is a really important one for people to look at because people get really hyper fixated on the requirements themselves, which of course is extremely important. That's what you have to do. But on top of implementing all these requirements, you then have to get assessed. And there's a whole nother set of things you have to complete in order to get assessed, which is what the CAP spells out. And I think it's a document that, a lot of people talk about 800, 171, the security controls and stuff. People don't talk a lot about the CAP, I think, because it's a little more boring, a little more bureaucratic, but it's still something you need to know how to do if you want to actually get a certification.
Yeah, like just to add on to that, I don't know how many people we've talked to that said, yeah, I've NIST 800 171, I got it, we're good to go. But when you start drilling into what the CAP is going to ask about it, then they're not really good to go. So just because you've gone through NIST 800 171 and you feel like, yep, I'm checking all these boxes, really compare that to how you are going to be assessed. Because while you technically might be doing everything, like It's one thing to do it, it's another thing to prove it, and it's another thing to go through an assessment process and be able to approve that.
Sure. And for like the basic, say you have IT on staff, right? Like you're not necessarily Fortune 500 company, but you have a robust IT team who understands what controls are for 171, 800. Is that an easy like ledge up, meaning like, oh, we have this basis, now we read through the cap and we're going to be able to implement if I understand the technological aspects of thing, or are there other components of that that are onerous beyond just my regular team?
Yeah, I kind of pulled some highlights out of the cap as things that I thought like a small business might get kind of caught off guard by. So I think just kind of at a high level. So the final one is out. It was released after the publication of the final rule, and it's a much better document than the original one. I think it's like half the length. It's really streamlined, a lot more readable. So I'd encourage anybody who's thinking about this whole CMMC process to definitely take a look at it. But I guess from a high level, there's 4 phases to it. These are the 4 phases when you actually start working with an assessor that you're going to need to go through over the course of your assessment. They're conducting the pre-assessment, assessing the security requirements, reporting the assessment results, and then the issuing a certificate and closing out any POAMs associated with it. So I guess I think the pre-assessment, there's a couple things I wanted to drill into in there that I think there's some kind of like tripwires and stuff that can get you into a lot of trouble if you're not actually prepared when you get in touch with an assessor. So I guess you want me to just run through those really quick, kind
Yeah,
of?
do it.
Okay.
Yeah, and I can
So
what I'll do is wherever we end up posting this, I'll put the show note situation. I'll put a link to the CAP 2.0, so that way people can grab it, follow along, do what they need to do.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the whole first phase of the assessment process, conducting the pre-assessment, basically boils down to making sure that you've done a good enough job that it's worth everyone's time to have an assessment. So the first thing that an assessor is going to want to do is review your SSP, your system security plan, which is essentially your roadmap to compliance. It talks about your environment, all the controls, how you're addressing them. So yeah, the first thing you're going to have to do is present your SSP, and the assessor is supposed to do a cursory review of it. So essentially they're looking at it for completeness, accuracy, and consistency, which basically means they want to look at it and make sure you haven't wildly missed the mark on your implementation, regardless of whether you're going to meet or not meet a control, just that you've done something to every control for you to actually be assessed. The second thing they're going to do is validate your assessment scope, which the cap is actually pretty light on details on this, interestingly, given that scoping is like the most important part of like the whole CMMC process. But you're going to have to kind of settle on an assessment scope, the scope of your information system that actually needs to be looked at by an assessor. And there's a whole complicated, that could be a whole different like episode of this on how you determine what your assessment scope is. But essentially, you're going to have like a really good idea of your assessment scope following like the CMMC scoping guidance. There's like certain categories of assets. There's rules to segmentation and external service providers and stuff like that. So you're going to need to have that all defined well enough that an assessor can look at it, make sense of it, and agree to it that you haven't made any mistakes there, so that everybody knows what you're going to actually assess. Kind of in conjunction with that, you have to identify any external service providers. So essentially an external service provider, there's like a really kind of dense, confusing definition to it, but it's someone like your MSP, someone who provides some service to you that impacts like your security controls and implementation of 800.171.
Mhm.
So you're going to have to identify those to an assessor. And for every one of those, you're going to have to present a customer responsibility matrix, which isn't mentioned anywhere in 800.171. And you're going to have to confirm that any personnel from the external service provider are going to be present and actively participating in the assessment. So this is one where if you have an MSP who configures your firewall or something, that's like a big security function, and there's going to be a bunch of questions about that in an assessment. So you need a customer responsibility matrix, which says what they do, what security controls they're responsible for, and you're going to have those people there to answer questions to the assessor. If they want to know something about the firewall, the people who configure the firewall are going to have to be there to talk about it.
Gotcha. How reaching is that? Meaning like, so if I have X company that provides like my internet, does it go that far?
No, and so
Okay.
There's specific rules to it. What it basically comes down to, whether or not someone is an external service provider, is whether or not they store, process, or transmit CUI, that controlled unclassified information, or federal contract information, which is the other kind of category of information in the CMMC world. If they have any of that data on their systems, then they are an external service provider.
Like, to add to it, like Joel said, you could have a whole call about scoping, but like if you were to do the scoping, your goal is to have as much out of scope as possible.
Okay.
And you need to be legitimate with it, but have as much out of scope as possible. And your ISP, your internet service provider, definitely doesn't store, transmit, or receive any CUI that you're working on. So that's an example of a more obvious barrier. But there's other segmentation pieces you can do in your network to put things out of scope. And you want to do that as much as possible to limit the amount of work and cost that it takes to maintain everything inside of the NIST requirements. But
And also, so you don't have like an oopsie from someone who shouldn't be accessing certain types of information and they come
yeah,
across it in your file system and you just don't know because they're not technically savvy.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Limit your
Yeah.
footprint,
Yeah.
your exposure. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Makes me think of I've been scrolling too much recently, right? And something came up about the TikTok ban, and it was
Hmm.
like senators asking questions about the TikTok ban, and this gentleman asked, "Sir, if I turn on the airplane mode on my phone, does TikTok have access to the airplane?" And I was like, oh, we're really dealing with some special people. Okay, so I think that's a good overview of CAP 2.0, at least for the time being. But given that this is where we are right now, right? CAP 2.0 is out. We have a couple rules that are like on the cusp of finalization. What do you guys expect in, I guess, the next couple of months or the rest of this year, specific to the CMMC side of things?
Yeah, so this is going to be the year of CMMC. So while we said it's real now and exists, it was created by a certain federal rule. It's not in contracts yet, and no one's required to get any certifications until a separate federal rule is published. And that will be definitely this year. It kind of depends on the federal bureaucratic process to publish that rule. But yeah, probably this spring, maybe this summer. No one can say exactly for sure, but Q2 2025.
And how would someone follow, like when those drop or whatever?
Man, it'll be all over the place. There's some government websites, some really bad government websites like regulations.gov, where all this stuff is like posted as it moves through various steps of it. I wouldn't reasonably expect anybody to check there, but it'll be in the news, it'll be all over LinkedIn, and people will see it in their contracts.
I think that's the most important thing. It's going to say in your contract that you're going to need a CMMC level 2 certification to be awarded this contract. I want to drill back into some things that you brought up earlier, Joel. So if a contract is out, let's say I think I'm pretty good to go. I'm not going to get assessed yet because I don't know when it's going to appear in a contract that I want to bid on. So I'm going to wait. And then one pops up. I'm like, cool, this is in our wheelhouse. I really want to go after this one. I feel like we're really close there. So let's go get an assessment and get that done. Can I bid on a contract if I don't have my CMMC level 2 certification?
So you can bid on it. However, if you win it and you don't have your certification by then, you can't accept it. And essentially the process for getting CMMC certified, I mean, besides even implementing any of this, let's say theoretically you have this awesome cybersecurity program, you're compliant already. Even in that case, there's like almost no chance you can actually get a certification in the time it takes between contract bid and award.
And now another thing you mentioned earlier is part of the assessment process is you go through, they submit your findings, they submit your POAM. If I have POAM items after I've been assessed, can I still bid on projects?
Yeah, so it depends. There's a certain scoring methodology to CMMC, and essentially you can receive what they call a conditional CMMC certification if you don't meet certain requirements. However, it's really restrictive in terms of essentially most of the requirements you do have to meet. If you fail, there's like this large, maybe 60% of the requirements. If you fail any of those, you're not getting your CMMC. There is a subset that you can fail those, get a conditional CMMC certification, and then close those out within 180 days. Although even then, you still need to meet a minimum score you need an 88 out of 110. And the ones you fail have to be only in this small subset of controls. So technically you can, but there's a lot of caveats and limitations on that.
Yeah, I think just to add on to it, like if you have submitted a Spur score, which if you're doing DoD contracts now, make sure you have a Spur score submitted, but you have a self-assessment you should fill out, and you have all these controls that you have to answer questions on, and they're worth a certain number of points. And if anything's worth 5 points and you miss that, there's no POAM that you can do for a conditional certification at that point. So you're talking about 1.1 really that you can fail and still put up a conditional on and get those resolved within 90 days.
Yeah, it's only the 1-pointers, and there's actually even a couple 1-pointers that they carved out of that because they consider them important enough. So it's a pretty limited set.
Just some questions that I remember hearing on related to poems. Someone thinking, well, if I fail, I'll just have a bunch of poems and then I'll be good. And it's like, well, only if you fail these certain ones.
Yeah, I think and with this, what the duty is trying to get away from is the whole Spurs score debacle where they said, assess yourself, write a poem, or you can't bid on contracts anymore. And everyone did that, and they just wrote a million poems and said the completion date was 10 years from now. And so there's no more doing that.
Yeah, I don't know. Oh, what do you got for us next?
So that was all of the big things. If that's your full speculation, then that's your full speculation. Basically, what I'm hearing is speculation is that this is going to be in contracts soon, and if you're not up to snuff, it's going to take you a fair amount of time to get there, and it's going to take you a longer time to get the check mark of compliance than it is for you to win a contract. So even if the contract, is out in a couple of months, it's going to take you a longer time to get the compliance check. Even if you're ready to go, even if you're good, everything is fine. Like, find the person who is going to make sure you are checking the compliance boxes and getting you through the assessment now, if you are even remotely thinking about going after one of these contracts. Yes?
Yeah,
Yes.
and I think what can I do? I think I'm pretty ready and I feel pretty confident. I'm just going to wait till one's out. I would say like an intermediary task that you could look at doing is hiring an auditor to do a pre-assessment for you. They could come on down or they could do it remotely. So it's more affordable and do a pre-audit for you. And you can actually sit through what an audit's actually going to look like. And it'll be maybe only 70% of a full audit, but it'll really give you an idea and you can see maybe where your gaps are and really understand as an organization what it'll take to get there. Like, it terrifies me that an organization has this complete unknown where they think they're ready, but they've never actually sat through an audit before. Let's try and sit through one of these and see what it's going to look like. You're right, you might not end up bidding on one in the next 6 months, but at some point in this year, something's going to come up that you probably want to bid on. At least have an understanding of what it's going to take to get to that point.
For sure.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I think under 171, the security requirements are pretty deceptively, if you're just a kind of normal IT guy keeping a place running and you look at 800 171, there's ways in which it doesn't look nearly as complicated and rigorous as it is. And so I think a lot of people can get really caught off guard by that. And so, yeah, doing something like a pre-assessment just to find out for sure, I think would be the minimum, even if you were going to try to wait it out. That'd be the minimum due diligence you'd want to do.
And is
Yeah.
that like for the pre-assessment, are you bringing in a third party to help you, or is it going through the check boxes by yourself? Like, what does that look like?
I would not self-assess. Again, just because kind of like assessment is its own skill set and field. And what you really want to do is ideally hire like a CMMC authorized, a C3PAO assessor. There's all sorts of companies out there that offer 800 171 like readiness assessments, and that would certainly have some value, but it doesn't include any of the CMMC specific requirements. And I think a CMMC certified assessor would be the best thing to go with.
Cool. Well,
I think one last thing is that I would add is like, so you have your internal IT staff getting things ready. You have a registered practitioner organization that you could have come in and help you get ready for an assessment. And then you can have an assessor, a C3PAO, that comes in and does either a mock assessment for you or a full assessment. And though you can't have all those tools at your exposure, if you think you're ready and you don't need a third party to come help consult and get it ready, then go get a mock assessment done. And then if you find out from that, wow, this isn't what I thought, there's a lot more to do, I don't have the time to do it, then you can reach out to an RPO to help you kind of get ready for it.
Well, I'm gonna shift us now to a completely different segment that no one is ready or prepared for. And
No.
so I've been very plugged into news for the last little bit, and so I just some things popped up, and I was like, "Oh, this is really interesting." And so this doesn't necessarily have to be CMMC focused, though I'm sure that there's a component of this. But with change of administration always brings change to many different components of what is going on in our world. And so I was just curious, especially as we've talked about, like the hurry up and wait for CMMC, right? It's always been right on the cusp, right on the precipice, and now it's here. With this sea change, are you guys expecting any kind of things to watch or large scale changes or another hurry up and wait situation, or like the train has left the station and we're chugging forward? Like any just it can be feelings. It doesn't have to be backed up by what is going on.
So there's a CMMC specific angle to this question that I think is kind of important to address. There's a bunch of CMMC haters out there who I kind of follow, who are always looking for a reason to say it's not going to happen. The latest one being the regulatory freeze that the Trump administration put in place when they came in, given that CMMC is created through federal regulations. So essentially, this is the new CMMC is not going to happen because of this. Which isn't true, which can't happen. Basically, CMMC, that regulatory freeze affects pending regulations. The one CMMC rule is no longer pending. It's published. The other CMMC rule is not yet pending because it hasn't been put out as like a proposed rule. So there's a lot of people trying to convince everyone that CMMC is dead again. And at least for this reason, it is not.
Yeah, that was exactly what I was looking for. So thank you for being very up in the know.
Well, and like on top of that, I would just say like the government has a need to secure this controlled unclassified information, and to secure government organizations to have a cybersecurity framework that they can roll out to all of them. And that's what CMC is. So like its initial construct is for DoD contractors to protect, safeguard CUI, but this framework is going to be implemented. The plan is to be implemented more widespread after that. That's what the CMMC AB's kind of aim is for. So I think you're just going to see more of this in more places. It's just hitting the DoD contractors first, because that's probably the biggest weak point for foreign adversaries to target and to get information that the government doesn't want them to have.
For sure. Okay. And then my second question is the last one, but I just thought this was an absolutely fascinating take, and I would love to hear it. It was talking about the changes happening with CISA. Obviously, you have an outgoing director, incoming. Again, everything is changing. And one cybersecurity leader was talking about like changes that could be implemented, like actual appetite for, with the government that we have. One of them being perhaps tax credits for small businesses who implement cybersecurity. And I was just wondering, what do you think of that idea? Like, just in general, it's an onerous thing for a small business to spend thousands of dollars. And I'm not just talking about CMMC, but I'm talking about, like you have a small whatever and you need PCI compliance. There's a couple $1,000s that you're spending for the cybersecurity pieces to become PCI compliant. Tax credits. Go.
I think I've seen. I think it's going to cost you more than a couple thousand to get PCI compliant, but
Sure.
I think I've seen a number of things related to CMMC on. We can include some of those costs in, like, hey, our bids are going to be more expensive to complete DoD contracts now because our cost to maintain our CMMC compliance has gone up, and a lot of that's expected and included. And if I'd recommend keeping track of what costs you're spending in your IT infrastructure that are related to CMC, because I think you're going to be able to include those and get really, you can call it reimbursed, but you can really just inflate your bid costs to cover the increased cost that it takes to do that. I think that's expected and anticipated. The government's incentivized to do that because the amount of IP that we're losing, the cost of that to foreign adversaries by not safeguarding this data is
Amen.
far greater in value. So there's incentives on both ends to get it done and get it secure.
Yeah, and there's been specific. There's a bill that was, I don't know the exact term. I need to brush up on my civics, but there was like a proposed bill put out in the House of Representatives specifically for CMMC to reimburse small companies, I think under 50 employees, up to, I think it was $50,000 for CMMC implementation. Which who knows if that'll go through. I think, it depends on a million different factors. But yeah, I do think it's a great idea. I think the return on investment, like you were saying, all the DoD estimates of like the value of data stolen from the defense industrial base is hundreds of billions of dollars a year, something crazy like that. So throwing some people money on the front end to cut back on that, I think is definitely a smart idea.
Yeah. Sorry. Thank you for entertaining I have been following governmental things for the last little bit and have worked in the legislature before. Corner. I appreciate it. Okay, so wrapping up, like a one, two, three most important things that people can do right now on this topic, CMMC preparedness, like real bullet points.
Yeah, let me take a stab, and Joel, you jump in when I say something dumb.
Okay, I'm ready.
I think as a business owner, making sure you understand where your organization is at if you anticipate on bidding on CMC contracts. And to me, that involves more than just, hey, IT guy, are we working on this? Make sure you have a real understanding and a cost estimate to get there. So what have you met? What are you not meeting? Do you have POAM, so plan of action, a milestone to get to where you need to be? Put a dollar value on those things. Sometimes there's time, sometimes there's software. A lot of times there's changes that the staff will have to go through. What does it take to implement those? On an IT side, it's really easy to say, all I have to do is check this box and then we're set. But there's a lot more involved in that. Sometimes checking that box really affects your workflow for your employees. So I guess there's one, just understanding where you're at on that side of it. Joel, I'll let you come up with another one.
Number two, I would say go read all of the official DoD documentation put out about CMMC. There's probably like, I don't know, maybe 150 pages worth of scoping guidance, assessment guidance, the assessment process like we were talking about. It's kind of boring. It's kind of dry, but it is incredibly important. So I would say start there. Just go read all of it. It'll take 2 days. Just do it.
Last one, go through your own assessment. So go through it. If you think you're ready, go do a full assessment on yourself and be able to prove it to somebody else in the room. So I say I'm doing this, show me how. Prove that you're doing it and go through that, because that's what the auditors are going to do. They're going to sit down with you. They're going to ask you what you're doing to do it, how you're doing it, prove that you're doing it. They're going to look at all of it. So make sure that you're going through a full assessment. I think like it should take you a week to go through it, or 4 full days to go through all of this. So if it's way faster than that, you're missing something.
Yeah.
Well, my take home is that I don't know about hanging out with Joel on a Friday night.
We can read some documentation.
Read the documentation. Well, I just want to say thank you to anybody who tuned in. If you found this helpful, share it with a friend, leave us a comment. You're welcome to email us at cmmc@stratus, Stratus dash services.com. From all of us at Stratus, we appreciate it and have a great day.